Hi there. This video is going to be a quick one for teachers on how to use Collaborate. So first things first, you want to create a PowerPoint slide presentation of what you want students to do and show on the Collaborate. I've made one here and I'm just going to save it. And I want to exit out of that program. The second thing is now we need to launch into Collaborate. You should have received an email like this. The first link is for you, and we're going to click it in just a moment. The second link, the guest link, is what you want to post to students so students will have access to and be able to join the session. But for your teachers, you want to click Join the Collaborate session. And notice I have an automatic download. If you haven't used Collaborate before, you're going to need to go through this launcher system and download the program. So I just need to open up that program. And sometimes it takes a little bit, but the application is starting. And this is our home screen. So what do I do first? First things first, you want to click Load Content and load up your PowerPoint. So I'm just finding the PowerPoint that I used a moment ago. Depending on how long your slides are, it may take a little bit longer. And you don't want to click anything right now, just let it do its thing. And here we go. So I always get rid of this Page Explorer. You don't need it. So I always load the content first. Then I always check my microphone settings, and I usually leave this posted for students. So you can do that by clicking the little microphone with the gear up at the top. You can also go under Tools, Audio, and click the Audio Setup Wizard, and you're going to go through this program. The next thing is I always turn on or turn off options for students. So the left-hand side is kind of the control center. Every single student is going to see the audio and they're going to be able to talk. So when I want to talk to the students, I click Talk and we can see that the bar is moving. You can also turn on the video. For your first one, I would turn it on so the kids see your face, but you can also turn that off for students as well. So you just do that by clicking the X's. So the microphone is turned on, the chat is also already turned on, and so they can type in here. The other thing that you may want to think about is the whiteboard permissions. So this would allow students to mark on the screen. They would have this little bar along the side and they could like draw a text box just like you would on a PowerPoint and type. So if you don't want students to do that, and for the first time I probably wouldn't, I would just turn that off. The other two ones are for application sharing and WebTour permissions. Those really slow down the Collaborate and create a lot of drag. I would just turn them off. I've used them once or twice, but that is for students, so I would recommend turning that off. The last thing to think about is your polling. So polling is to have students respond A, B, C, or D. So every student, and you also have this, is under the participants, they have their name, and then there's various icons that they can use. So if students have a question, you can have them raise their hand, and then they can take the microphone. The last one is this check marks or an X. So this is the polling button. For my purposes, I usually want A, B, C, or D, so I'm just going to change that to go to Tools, and you go to Polling Type, and I can change that to A, B, C, D. So now when I ask poll, students can just choose A, B, C, D. Final reminders. So you want to make sure you click Record in the upper right-hand corner when you're ready to start. Use the arrows in the upper right-hand corner, left and right, to change the slides. And make sure, and I still do this, I'll sometimes start talking and I'll forget to press the talk button. So make sure you press the talk button. The final thing is you may need to remove a student. I've never had this problem, but I believe you just right-click over the student's name and you'll be able to remove that student. So what might be a typical chat for students? I always have an opening slide, just like I had for you guys. On that slide, I usually have the agenda. What are we going to do in chat that night? I also usually have the microphone settings up as well. So for example, I'm going to have the students do a Q&A so they can type their questions in the chat box, or they could also raise their hand to ask questions in the microphone. Then I might ask a couple of multiple choice questions on whatever topic I want. So for that, we would just advance the slide, and here's a multiple choice question, just like you might show on a regular classroom slide. Students, hover next to your name, hover over the A button, right, because I've already set it up, and they're going to vote. So the correct answer is reading the question. It's D, mosaics. And when students are in here, you'll be able to see all their responses. If you don't want other students to see each other's responses, just go to Tools, Polling, and then Make Responses Visible. Just unclick that, and now the students won't be able to see what everyone else voted. You, however, will be able to see everything. So the final thing I want to discuss is breakout rooms, and this is a little bit more advanced, but think of it as a virtual jigsaw or virtual groups, right? So these are the directions that I have for students. So in a moment, I'm going to move them into a breakout room. In that room, I have the directions. I want them to read a document that I'm going to post and talk with their neighbors, their groups, about their discussion. So you can have it randomly assigned, or what I most likely do is I create a chart with the number of groups that I'm going to have and who's already in that group. So how do you set up a breakout room? You're going to go to Tools, Breakout Rooms, and you're going to create breakout rooms. So I usually title it Group, and then how many rooms do I want? I've got 4 rooms. So options. If I set this up beforehand, which I normally do, I want to click Don't Move Participants. If I don't, and I just want it random, I will just distribute the participants evenly. So I'm going to click Create. Now on the left-hand side, you can see I've got groups. So after I click that, students would be randomly put in the groups, and they need to see a document. So in my PowerPoint slide, I already have that, but if I move myself into that group, and you can do that by just dragging yourself into a group, the slide is blank, and the kids won't be able to see it. So what we need to do as a teacher is we want the kids to see this. So if you just right-click, and then you go down to Current Page, Copy to Breakout Rooms, I can easily copy that to all the breakout rooms that I want the students to discuss it. So Group 3, they all see this now, and they can talk in their groups and do that. The final thing about breakout rooms is I do usually have, and I usually put up a timer. So the timer is really simple. The I button up at the top and start the timer, and there we go. To bring the students back to the main room in the breakout rooms, you would just go to Tools, Breakout Rooms, and you would click Return Everyone to the Main Room when you want students to come back, and you can collectively rehash everything. The final thing that, for example, I had students at the end, I usually have a closing slide, and I'll say, this is your exit ticket. It'll link to a Google form, and they need to complete that for credit as a great way to check for individual engagement, whether or not concepts that you talked about in the chat, whether or not they got it. So I hope this was helpful for you. I'll go back to the main slide. If you have any questions, feel free to go back and watch this video, or YouTube. There's tons of other videos out there with more detail on how to use Collaborate. Thanks, guys.